welcome everybody to the Wednesday edition of the Daily Cheat Sheet. I'm a little giddy because I can't wait for Mend to tell us who he met at the pool today. But I do want to welcome everybody and say thank you for everybody for all the downloads. Quite the day in news. Everybody has woken up to the shock. Yesterday when we were doing the show, it was prior to the elections that were going on in New York. So all we could really base it on was the poly markets and what we felt. Golan, Mend and I are both New Yorkers, and I lived through the David Dinkins period, and I left New York City about 22 years ago when gentrification just started ruining this great place that I loved. It started ruining the village and so many things. And I left and I saw something changing. I saw something coming. This was not on the radar, but I saw a change in New York. And right now, I don't know really how to describe the change that happened last night, but this should frighten every person in America.
There's no question. You know, we mentioned yesterday who Zohran Mamdani is and what he believes in, but it bears repeating a little bit. This is a guy who won the Democratic primary in New York yesterday by promising a bunch of free stuff to everybody. No idea how he's going to pay for it. The free buses, the rent freezes, city-run grocery stores where everything's super cheap. Of course, also globalizing the Antifada, fighting for Palestinian rights. You know, it's weird how often people get elected because as a base to their entire platform, Palestinian rights, when they don't live anywhere near Palestinians. Don't know how that works, but somehow it does. Trump, I think, labeled him better than anyone could have. I'm just going to quote the man, 100% communist lunatic. I would have thrown in Jihadi, but all right, that math checks out. I'll allow it. This is a guy who Bernie Sanders, of course, the biggest self-hating Jew, social, insane nut job, is supporting. Someone that AOC is supporting. Free everything, paid by taxes that everyone is going to pay. So if you look at it through the prism of gentrification, you know, I know you guys are New Yorkers, like original New Yorkers. I used to live in two different parts of New York. When I met my wife, the longest period of time I spent in New York, I was in Bushwick, which went overwhelmingly for Mamdani. But interestingly, Bushwick used to be the #1 spot in the United States for welfare recipients in the entire country. That is not the case anymore. About 10 years ago, it was named the 7th hippest place in the world by Vogue magazine. Didn't make it any less dirty when I lived there, but it meant that gentrification was running rampant. And it didn't just raise rents. It bleached out the city's common sense, replaced it with artisanal outrage and all the rest. And what we end up finding is that if you look at the breakdown of voters, middle-class voters, working-class voters, Black voters, Hispanic voters overwhelmingly did not vote for this guy. So what that means is all these woke, you know what, Mend? I love what you said yesterday. I'm going to steal it back, which is woke white women, I think is how you put it, basically are voting for what they think minorities want because it makes them feel good. So they're the ones who voted for Mamdani, while the people they're voting on behalf of were like, why the hell would we want this guy to be in office?
Well said. And Mend, obviously we're both Brooklyn kids. And for people that are not familiar with Brooklyn and New York, the places that Golan just referred to were no-go zones when we were kids. We were not traveling into Bushwick, into many areas. And we were in a chat today where somebody brought up the fact that it has a lot to do with illegal immigration. And not when you look at the numbers, Mend. When you look at the numbers, this has everything to do with mass gentrification, not mass immigration.
You know, I remember growing up and I had a friend who had a bakery, and it was in Bushwick. And it was one of those commercial bakeries where it's just a closed factory and they deliver to all the bakeries around the city. And when we'd go to visit him at his bakery at night, they would work all night. You had to watch where you were driving because the pothole covers, the manhole covers were stolen. So if you didn't aim your car right, you'd lose an axle in the middle of the street. That was Bushwick. Bushwick was just a hellhole. So, you know, look, only 9%, I think it's 9% of New Yorkers voted in this election. Most people are indifferent. What they don't realize is that if they don't wake up and save their city, you're going to have a maniac running the city. The guy's talking about city-run grocery stores. That is straight out of communist China. Grocery stores have minimal margins. It's like single to double digit margins on the items they sell. They barely make any money off of the products that they sell, but they make it up in volume. They sell tons of it, and they are very efficient because they have the economies of scale. The average grocery chain has several hundred stores. So they could, one is, collectively bargain. They get better pricing. They have efficiencies. They have all the trucks and everything in place. This guy's talking about city-run grocery stores. There's no way that is going to save anything. It's going to be one of those things where then they're going to mandate lower prices. Companies are going to stop innovating or selling or manufacturing. Go out and read Atlas Shrugged. Ayn Rand wrote these fantastic books, and it basically tells you what is happening to these cities. If you penalize the biggest wealth creators, they stop creating wealth. If you penalize the biggest companies, they flee. They go to Florida. If you penalize successful New Yorkers and you prioritize criminals, then criminals take over. Your city is just a death spiral. It'll go downhill just like Oakland or Detroit. And we don't want that for New York. New York is an amazing city. It's the most amazing city in the world. It's the capital of everything. So New Yorkers have a chance to save their city. Get out and vote.
In fact, when you leave the country, by the way, and I think we all have left the country, when you say America, people often think New York. That's America to them, is New York. And sadly, this America does not necessarily, please God, don't let it be representative of New York. But he brought up something interesting, Golan, which is the numbers. And again, this was the primary, right? So there's still a slim chance that he doesn't win. But I was talking with Ben Stein before the show about this. Everything is numbers. Everything is numbers. And we're talking about somebody like Bill Ackman, who's been extremely vocal, obviously, since October 7th, which really crawled up Tucker Carlson's you-know-what in anger. But Bill Ackman's a numbers guy. How did he not see this coming? How did people like him not start noticing a trend? And once a trend starts, it's almost impossible to stop. And that's an economic law. Once a trend starts, almost impossible to stop. Go on.
I agree with you, and I've been asking this question. Actually, it's interesting you ask it here. I didn't know you were going to ask this question. I asked this exact question just today. Now he suddenly is making an announcement. I'm throwing my weight behind Eric Adams. This can't happen. And good for him, by the way, that he's doing it. He threw his weight behind Cuomo before. But it's a strange thing. This is a guy who clearly thought experience would hold, and like traditional experience, and wasn't paying attention to all of the ways that, by the way, there are reports that Qatar was not only financing part of Mamdani's campaign, but also manipulating social media. And so the idea that they were using these new techniques, they're not even that new anymore, but compared to what Cuomo had been doing, relying on traditional media, relying on traditional experience, people were looking for, especially the people who didn't know any better, radical change over that traditional polish. And he fell into that trap of thinking, okay, I'm just going to continue down the resume route, and wasn't paying attention to this unfiltered kind of socialist progressivism that was coming up on the right. And Ackman's world is literally, his entire business is all about managing risk, right? So how did he not see this coming? It's because he didn't calibrate for populist momentum. And I think that
and not just that, by the way, it's about trends and numbers. That is Ackman's thing. And Mend, he didn't follow the trends. He didn't follow his own metrics of what's gone on for the past part of over 600 days.
I don't want to beat up on Bill Ackman. I think he's doing a fantastic job. He's putting his money where his mouth is. He even moved his company to Florida. But I think the Zohran Mamdani's win as the Democratic Party's candidate for mayor of New York is indicative of the rot in the Democratic Party. They have lost their way. They are rudderless. They have no idea what they're doing. And the lunatics on the fringe are taking over. So you have the AOCs that think she's going to be president. You have the Mamdani who might actually become... Let me tell you something. If that happens, we are so screwed.
Okay, let me ask you a question. A question. Be honest. If a month ago, I would have told you that we would have a jihadist as the probably next mayor of New York City, what would you have said to me?
Let's actually call this jihadist out. So he is the guy
who says...
Can you just answer that question? He says globalize the intifada. That's one of his lines. He is for defunding the police. He's a socialist, Marxist lunatic. No, I would have never believed it. I did not think that New Yorkers were this stupid. So,
By the way, you know
you know,
what you
I,
sound like though a little bit, Mendon, and I'm not beating up on you when I say this, but
yeah.
I remember when every talking head on TV was saying, "Please, Trump, run! It'll be so funny. It'll make my ratings go up. Please, oh, it would be so great if he would run." I'm talking
No,
about Colbert. I'm talking about Jon
they
Stewart.
all,
I'm talking about when they were making fun of it. When they said, "Oh my God, he really is
I see
thinking
what
about
you're
running.
saying.
Please, please," because they assumed it was an impossibility. Let me tell you, AOC right now is the most popular person on the liberal side of the spreadsheet. And the fact that, look, Bill Ackman is not dumb. He has made billions of dollars spotting trends before everyone else even knew a trend existed in that place. Here, he was betting on confidence. And that shouldn't be the thing that we're like, why would you bet on confidence? But right now, he forgot that virality and this hunger for this socialist performative BS is actually trumping it. And
So,
look, yeah, I agree.
no,
He's putting his money where his mouth is, but he missed it.
I hear what you're saying, and I think this could go two ways. I think one is at the end of the Trump presidency, we could see the Americans, let's just call it the Americans, winning on so many levels that people are going to say, we want more of this. And the AOCs and the Bernies and all those moronic idiots who have no idea what they're talking about will just get trounced. They'll just get smashed. It actually opens up an opportunity for some sane people within the Democratic Party to take leadership roles. I'm talking about like the Josh Shapiros or the Fettermans or Richie Torres. I mean, that guy would make an amazing candidate if he could actually be elevated to the top of the Democratic Party by the leaders, but they're not doing that. What they're doing is they're leaving their flank open, and these wacko lefties are coming in from the side, and they are just eating up all the oxygen in the room. You have Bernie and AOC doing their tour, private jet, fly around the country tour, and you have and it's not just them, it's the people, it's the Democrat base that is dying for some sort of leadership. And right now, the only leadership that they're seeing is lunatic AOC, Hamas-loving Islamist who's running for mayor of New York. They're willing to latch on to anything. So what I'm saying is that the Democratic Party should put out better candidates to allow their base to latch onto. These are the never Trumpers. They hate everything he's doing. And that's fine. You're allowed to. It's a free country. But give them someone. Give them someone who will actually lead the party, not these lunatics that want to destroy the country. So personally, I don't think she has a shot in hell. I hope this Mamdani guy doesn't make it to the leader of the mayor of New York. If he does, that city is done. You're going to see, but this is the other thing, is that you're going to see companies flee. The New York Stock Exchange will flee. Everybody will run. But if you look at Detroit, you look at cities like that have been an absolute abject failure for 30, 40 years, they still don't go with the Republican candidate. I mean, you have sane people that try to come up after 40 years of failure and have better solutions, and they still can't win. So what happens is it's like the frog that's getting cooked in the hot water. He doesn't know he's being cooked. He just thinks, oh, it's getting a little warmer and warmer. Before you know it, he's dead, right? It's the same thing. These cities slowly decline, but it's not like everybody says, oh my God, this is terrible. A woman was set on fire on the New York subway, and city has remained as if, no big deal. Everybody just goes about their day because it's such a big city that the average person isn't directly affected by this rampant crime. A lot of people know somebody who was, but not everybody themselves were. So until it gets absolutely horrible, but even in cities where it got absolutely horrible, they still don't change course. So I don't think that's the solution. I think you actually need leaders who care about the place to stand up and save it.
But that's what. But this is the mistake. And I'm not saying he's wrong, and I'm not saying you're wrong. But this is the mistake that Ackman made. He assumed that people in the city still cared about things like crime and infrastructure and actually things being run properly instead of free buses and cancel rent and so
But
someone said to
they
me
do. They do. I've
they
seen.
do, but that 9.1% that came out, 52% on behalf of a jihadi socialist who wants to hand out free bagels to everybody every morning. Maybe not bagels, that's too Jewish, but something free.
I want to bring
They
this
do.
back, though. I want to bring this back, though, to the bigger point, because this was the discussion we were having yesterday. And Men brought up the point, and I get what point he's bringing up. But go on. The problem is, and I'll let Men respond first, actually. So this is an extreme confliction you're having, right, with AOC. But she's nothing but a Rogan podcast away from being the next president of the United States. So we can't minimize them. Trump could call these people lunatics, and we know they are. But to some people, sadly, to many people, they're representing a life that we don't know and a life that terrifies us, but they're catching on. And the Democrat Party, there is nobody that's going to rise. I agree with you. You have Fettermans, you have Richie Torres, you have moderates like Shapiro. They're done. They don't have a place in that party. Their best shot is to join Republicans and let the Democrats burn. That's our only shot because, men, they're about 10 election cycles away from ever getting back to normal.
I think a guy like Richie Torres has a moral compass on so straight that guy should be president.
Again, but this isn't about should. We got to stop with the should and see where they are now.
I saw a street poll where they were out after the people voted. They were asking them, who did you vote for and why? And do you know his policies? And it's a whole bunch of, white guys and white women, for the most part, that were saying that they voted for her, for Mamdani. And then the guy asked them, are you for defunding the police? And they go, no. But he's for that. Do you realize that he says globalize the intifada? No. So these people just have no idea. These are TikTok voters. They're just voting because Emily Wojcicki or some other moron told them that's who you need.
And that was what I was saying yesterday, that this is where they're getting their resources from. And this should frighten the crap out of everybody because again, I want to get back to Bill Ackman, go on. I was not knocking on Bill Ackman. I was simply just saying this was a trend that we should have seen coming. The second this guy got into the race, people probably like Mend, and I'll use myself and said, oh, this lunatic will never win. Well, we've had enough evidence of lunatics winning that at what point do we stop saying there are lunatics that have a shot? Look at, my God, look at the squad. Look at all these people in our wildest imaginations we never thought would win go on.
Yeah, look, right now, Ackman is trying to put together a plan in which he hopes Cuomo is going to drop out. He hopes Sliwa is going to drop out, and it'll just be Eric Adams versus Mamdani. And then, he wants to drive that all the way to the finish line. I don't know what's going to happen with this now, because I think you have hit upon something that we should all be paying attention to. And I don't want to make people worry necessarily, but we at least have to be watching it because maybe we are that frog in the proverbial water, as men pointed out, which is this is going to keep happening. They are going to keep putting people up that are radicals, whether they're jihadis or whether they're socialists, or, this guy's also part of the Democratic Socialists, which is a group that just a couple of weeks ago was celebrating the murder of innocent people. Literally, by the way, look that up. Don't take my word for it. So the fact that we allowed this guy to even win a primary, or that it even if he had lost and it had been close, I would have had my sphincter tightening. So the idea that this is going to happen.
Thanks for the image.
Absolutely. You're very welcome.
You're really, thanks.
I'm a writer. I paint pictures with words.
Okay, all right. So we are talking about this trend, and I'm going to say that the trend is a lot bigger than just Mamdani. If you're looking at Bernie Sanders was a wacko in the Senate for the last 700 years. He was
okay. Before you start, I just want to say something because you're raising a great point. Bernie Sanders won a mayoral race, I want to say in Vermont, by maybe 10 votes. That's what set his career in motion, was winning a local yokel mayoral race by a few votes, Mend. Go on.
Yeah, and then, he was a lunatic from Vermont that nobody paid attention to. And now he has a stage that the entire nation is watching. So the trend is not good. What you're seeing, there's two trends. There's the Middle East and parts of Europe and South America, which is trending to the right because they are done with this lefty nonsense because they hit rock bottom and they saw where it leads to. They know where socialism leads to. And then you have the other trend, which is the West, and that is America, the UK, France. They are trending right to the point where these people are running away from. So they're going towards socialism. They're going for open borders. They're going for everything that these people that have tried it are done with, The West is trying it now, and it's alarming. It's scary.
Well said. To prove your point, they're the ones that stopped the trans stuff way before we did. We're still pushing it. You have France and the UK that have banned it with children, and we're the country that's still, or the party, I should say, in our country that's still plugging it. Moving on, though, I think this CNN thing is absolutely insane. You have this CNN report that was a preliminary report from a writer who's known to be an extreme anti-Trump person.
It's the same writer who claimed that the laptop was fake by the 51 whatever, blah, blah, blah. The same exact girl.
Yeah, exactly right. And you have this story is because it's CNN, like I brought up yesterday, that has a massive crowd, especially online. This became a story that Trump, all of a sudden, again, he can't take a victory. He can't take a victory for what's going on in NATO, where he's doing an amazing job. He's got to deal with this horse crap, and it's enough.
Absolutely. You would think that CNN, despite their politics, would be able to look at obliterating an Iranian nuclear site and say, this is a win. Okay? The idea that they continue to undercut everything that Trump does is, and I hate using this phrase, by the way, because whenever anyone uses a hyperbolic phrase, I'm always like, all right, take it easy. But this truly is Trump derangement syndrome. This is one of those things that you see over and over again. And when it comes to the press, it's not just dangerous. It becomes something that now is influencing others and becomes a true problem that now is proliferating. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. Instead of reporting on reality, that the Fordo nuclear facility was leveled, instead they talk about, it's always unnamed, by the way, intel sources to let us know, actually, the bunker busters, not a big deal. And they're still pushing this lie. This is the same network, as men pointed out, that was pushing the Hunter Biden laptop lie. This isn't just the same network. This is the same writer who, for some reason, still has a job and credibility. So the idea that we're taking any information from these people is ludicrous at this point.
I agree with everything Golan just said. It's mind-boggling that these major news organizations employ these people. The Washington Post, which is owned by Jeff Bezos, and I get it, he bought it so that they run cover for all of his shenanigans, and he's happy as long as they don't bother him. But they are destroying the country. Disney, which owns The View, allows these lunatic, racist, American haters every day to go on live air and spew hate. How is that okay? Why isn't the entire organization boycotted? It makes no sense. We just do this over and over and over again. We allow people. I mean, there was Taylor Lorenz, who worked for the Washington Post, and she wasn't fired after multiple false claims, multiple false reports. She was claiming that she was the victim of doxing, and then she doxed people. She doxed the Libs of TikTok owner. I mean, again and again and again, these hypocrites just get away with it, and it makes no sense. I don't understand it. I would think that the right would organize themselves and do real global boycotts of these organizations until they change their ways.
You brought up a really good point, and I've learned this from Ben Stein. I've actually also learned it from reading history, which, Golan, you'll remember, there was a senator named George McGovern. And George McGovern, his sole job was to go after communists and within the government. And did he lie a little bit? Yeah. Did he drink a little bit too much? For sure. But was he on the right track in what he was doing? Yeah, there were a lot of communists in the government. There were a lot of communists in Hollywood. There was a lot of communism running around during the Cold War. And right now we have a lot of subversives in our government, and we have a lot of subversives in the media. And I get sometimes that you get a little shell-shocked from past things go on. But to Men's point, which I think is a really exceptional point, is where is that Republican senator that's going to have enough guts? Let's just say Lindsey Graham. What do you have to lose, Lindsey, at this point? And my biggest issue with Lindsey is for many years, right? You could put him on Hannity for 6 years and hear the same thing. We're investigating this. We're investigating this. I never saw an investigation from Lindsey Graham. Okay. But 6 years on loop. And Golan, how about somebody like Lindsey Graham who's got nothing to lose? Just go after these people, because a lot of this really is against the law.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know if I put those two things together, but when you say it out loud, it's hard to unhear it. I think you're right. I think we might be so traumatized by the ghost of the Red Scare backlash that we've lost our nerve. Reason why, at least one of the reasons why we're not calling out real radicals when they're staring us in the face is because we don't want to be seen as, once again, doing that thing that is the un-American thing, as it's been labeled, right? I think that this rooting out of people within the government that are there not for the sake of America and not for the sake of American ideals, I think is unbelievably important. I have an episode, I'm not trying to promote it, but I have an episode of my other podcast, the one that I do solo, Jew Can't Handle the Truth, that is called, the episode is called The Democrats' Jewish Problem. And it literally just goes through a list. And the only reason I did it, by the way, is because when I started researching it, the list didn't end. It just kept going. A list of people within the Democratic Party who are anti-Jewish, anti-Israeli, anti-American ideals, anti-Constitution, and how it's just a rampant problem. Now, of course, we see it kind of blatantly every day, but to go through and root people like that out and make America, geez, I was unironically about to say make America great again. Wow, good job, Trump. But that's, I think, what we need to do, because seeing the way that they are dragging down the government and all the decisions that we're making as a whole, and ending up with people like Mamdani potentially in office, I think that's the reason why it's happening.
I'll bring up something you brought up yesterday, and you always bring her up, is somebody like Ilhan Omar. So you take Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, you take all of these people, and you say, how are they allowed to be allowed into the SCIF? How are they allowed clearance in some of the biggest secrets the United States government has? And there really needs to be a Republican that rises up and says, no longer. We're going to have hearings on this. We're going to have hearings on where your money came from, who supported you, and all of these things, man. And I think you would love that.
I think we need to have that, and I also think we need to change the laws and not allow people that weren't natural-born citizens to run for office. It's that simple. These people come here, and within 10 years of landing on our shores, they still have their radical ideology of the places they came from, the places they fled, but they came here and they're trying to advocate for the places that they are running away from. It makes no sense. We need to change those laws. Get rid of that first gen. You might get the crazy second gen. That's okay. We'll deal with that. But first gen, that's an easy, low-hanging fruit. Take that away. Ilhan Omar's kids are as crazy as she is. But that's fine. They could try to run for government and we'll see where that goes. But the people that just came here off the boat, absolutely not. It should not be the case. I don't know why we allow that. It's not allowed for the president, and they just need to expand that to all levels of government, including local.
You know, it's interesting, Golan, he brings that up because as he was saying that, I was trying to think in my head of Republicans that are in office right now that aren't first generation. And I'm having a very hard time, as somebody that could pretty much go down the list. Obviously, I'd have a hard time with many of the Congress people, or the people in the House, I should say. But I can't really think of one. And I know this is not going to be politically correct to say. I get it. I understand that people have a hard time with this. I think the McGovern thing, definitely Hollywood had a huge impact on portraying McGovern to be this evil human. But listen, there were communists in our country during the Cold War. Okay? That's just the reality. And right now we're in a war. Whether we want to admit that we're in a war or not, we are. And there are people that should not be trusted with classified intel. Plain and simple.
Well, especially when you see people, let's just use Ilhan Omar again as an example. She has made pretty explicit where her allegiance lies. She said, for as long as I am in Congress, no one will take Somalia's seat. Quote, the U.S. government will do what we tell them to do. Who's we? I thought you were in the U.S. government. So obviously you are making a comment about how your allegiance is here and this is secondary to you. But she is actively going against government policy. You know, ICE, for instance, she is trying to help Somali immigrants who are illegally in the country evade and navigate arrest and deportation. I'm sorry, that is once again not putting your country first. And this dual loyalty concept, you know, oh, that's a smear and it's a false accusation. She says it herself. The we of it all is not something you can hide. And so to have someone like that who has access to our secrets, who has access to our intel, who has access to decision makers that is going to do stuff on behalf of whoever it is that isn't American, whether it's her or Mamdani going on talk shows and talking about how Palestinian rights were his number one thing and how he's so excited about BDS being a part of his platform and all the rest. It's like, are you here for the New Yorkers or are you here for the Palestinians? So if you are not here for New Yorkers first or Americans first, then America first. Once again, God, these slogans just write themselves, I guess. Then get out. And if you don't get out, we should kick them out. Absolutely.
Man, it's really interesting, though, because Golan just brought up that point with ICE. And that's just an easy, low-hanging fruit, as you said. Call these people up in front of the House and the Senate. Investigate these people. It's not that I don't know what else they're doing. I mean, they're not passing the big, beautiful bill yet, so I really don't always know what they're doing in the House or the Senate oftentimes. So go after them. I think you'd actually have the people in this country on your side if they did it.
They should do that. And in a healthy democracy, you'd have the Democrat leaders actually calling them out as well. Are you a pro-America? Are you an American senator, whether you're on the Democratic side or the Republican side? You should be calling out the person who's advocating for another country, like Somalia. I think Tom Homan should go into that Somali capital in, what state are they in?
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Go in there and start deporting the illegals. Curb the amount of immigration we can take from that country. We all saw Black Hawk Down. We know how they feel about Americans there. Why are we allowing these people into our country? It makes no sense. So one is immigration reform. Stop taking in people that are going to be a burden on the society. That is, first and foremost. Lock down the borders. They already did that. Great. Mass deportations, absolutely. Can't do it big enough, can't do it fast enough. And then take these people up, bring in investigations, actually find out where they're getting financed, who's backing them, and then bring them up on charges if they broke the laws. That's what should be done. I mean, there's so much talk on X about all of the illegal things. Almar marrying her brother so that he could evade immigration laws and come into this country. If that is in fact real, if that is true, go after her for it. Like, what are they doing? These are the things that need to be done. Protect the country. And if someone came in illegally and they are patriotic, which a lot of Cubans are, then they could get elevated to highest offices in the country, like Marco Rubio. They are patriots. They love this country. They're not trying to steal from this country to fund some other country. They are for this country. They are grateful for this country. Some of the biggest patriots I know are immigrants.
And by the way, just for the record, so people understand, for Cubans, it's different. And Golan, you could correct me if I'm wrong. As somebody, I don't mind correcting me if I'm wrong. As long as they touch sand, like if they touch sand, they're legal at that point. It's very different than crossing the border with Cubans. I don't think they have to go through the same exact process. It's like if they touch land, they're safe here, especially because of where they came from. Golan, am I wrong about that, or we have to look that up for a different time?
No, that is a real thing. I happen to know. The idea of touching American soil or American sand and having special protection is real. It's tied to the, what do they call it? The wet foot, dry foot policy, I think it was called. And this is something from Clinton in 95. So that is a real thing.
Thank you for that. So moving on, though, because it's same continuation. So the DOJ is investigating a group called ActBlue for fraud and for financing of Dem congressmen, Dem senators, obviously, and all this stuff, and finding out where the dark money is coming from. So this is something we have to give the DOJ credit for. Again, another thing that's important, Golan, moving forward.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know what ActBlue is the platform the Democratic Party uses as a fundraising platform. I know that we have an ideological bent here on the show, but I have donated to certain Democratic candidates in the past, and it's always through ActBlue every single time. And basically what they discovered was fraud on a massive scale. And they went after ActBlue. The first response was nothing. They literally, the DOJ is accusing them, I should say it's an accusation of widespread fraud. That includes foreign contributors, that includes straw donor schemes, that includes all sorts of things, and the leadership there refusing to cooperate. Many people are looking at this like this is Trump going after his opposition with like a weaponized probe aiming to cripple Democratic fundraising sites or something like that. But ultimately, there are real problems that are happening there, and you can look internally if you read the stories that now are coming out, and it's still being investigated, but there are real stories of how they weakened deliberately internally their fraud controls while knowing about the risks. And that included, not requiring CVV codes. When you put in a credit card, you have to put that 3-digit code. It's like not making that part of the requirement, or accepting foreign prepaid gift cards and all sorts of stuff that basically allow you to do subterfuge of where the money's coming from. They did that stuff on purpose. Now they claim they have reasons for it, but ultimately it means that profits and power for them came before compliance. And it's something that absolutely needs to be investigated.
And I want to get to you, though. I want to get to you because Golan brought up a word. And, Mend hasn't always been a Republican or a conservative. I don't even know what he is. I never ask him. I don't give him a litmus test. It's not like I could say, pull down your pants and know what he is. But I don't think we're necessarily skewed is the right word, right? I don't think we're skewed. I just think we're common sense people. And
100%.
I mean, I know a lot of the stories we touch upon have to do with Trump, but when you look at a lot of these issues, men, including in New York, we all witnessed what was going on. And if you were a Democrat, it pushed you a little closer to the right. If you were on the right, it pushed you a little farther right. I think that's what all these issues have done. So none of this is coming from a skewed view. It's coming from a view, Mend, where we're witnessing things going, this isn't right.
So there's two things that I'd like to touch on here. One is when things skew to the left and it goes nuts. I lived through the Crown Heights riots under Mayor David Dinkins, where we had riots break out after a car accident, and unfortunately a kid got killed. And people started rioting, not from the neighborhood. These were outside agitators that came in.
Brought in by Al Sharpton.
Fueled by Al Sharpton and his lies. This is the same guy who lied about Tawana Brawley and her rape accusations, which was completely made up. And he's now a pundit on MSNBC. So lived through that, where the mayor of the city said, allow them to blow off steam for 3 days. So while we were locked in our houses and just watching chaos go on outside, people were being murdered on the streets, the city decided not to act for 3 days. That's what extreme Democrats at that time were. Now it's going to be 1,000 times worse. So that's number one. Number two, as far as ActBlue and the fraud allegations that are being brought up there, James O'Keefe did an expose where he actually got the records of who donated and then went to visit these people in their homes and said, I would like to talk to you about the $98 donation you made to ActBlue. And they go, what donation? None of them heard of it. None of them made it. So what they did was they took citizens' names, they funneled money into ActBlue under those citizens' names. This is foreign money. And they did it in small amounts across thousands or hundreds of thousands of citizens and funded tremendous amounts of money into Democratic Party coffers. So who funded it? They're going to go after that. I hope they find it. And I hope they shut that entire network down. And then as far as people saying that this is Trump going after his political opponents, I mean, you just have to laugh at that. I mean, they changed the statute of limitations to charge Trump with a crime of bank fraud when the bank got paid back in full. The bank themselves said this was a great transaction for us and we would gladly loan him money again. And it was past the statute of limitations for it to be fraud. It was a misdemeanor case that they then convoluted into a felony case, saying that it was to help his election and not just to help him financially. The entire thing was made up. And these are the people that are going to accuse him of going after his political opponents? Ignore that. And you lock these people up. You go after them. He should be sending every single federal agent onto their cases. And I would say the exact same thing if the shoes were turned and these were Republicans that did it.
Okay, we just have to be careful because we don't report on the rumor that the stuff that James O'Keefe did with like Project Veritas most of the time has been really groundbreaking. Every once in a while it doesn't pan out. We got to be careful about reporting on stuff that hasn't happened yet. Right now, he's got some claims. Some of those claims have already been debunked. Some of them haven't. And so we're in a space right now where we're reporting on something that is still in progress. So one of the arguments is that Trump jumped the gun a little bit with this because he was eager to go after his opponents. And that's whether that's true or not. It's something we just have to watch carefully because what we've seen recently is that when Trump is eager to do something, like what he did arresting some of the, illegal jihadis or people who were breaking their green card rules or whatever, is they hadn't built their case yet. And the result, whether it was activist judges or not, building that case and making it strong so it was undeniable would have been something that could have been a real symbol of SmackDown, and instead backfired because it was too premature. And I just want to make sure we don't fall into that trap again.
I got you. And I'd like to point something out. One is James O'Keefe has a wall of apologies and retractions that in his office of all of the newspapers that claimed that what he was saying was bunk, then had to apologize and publicly admit that they were wrong because he sued them for defamation and won. So he has
correct.
A track record.
I know about that, but that's not what I'm talking about.
It's maybe 90%. He's probably on point 90%.
What I'm talking about was in this investigation, there were some things where he was talking about stolen identities or straw donors. Straw donors, by the way, are donors where they're fake donors that are there so people can funnel money through and break donation laws and all of that. I'm just saying that they've already discovered that some of it was like FEC reporting rules meant that things had to be double counted. This is getting wonky, and I don't want to get too deep into it. I just want to say we got to be careful about reporting on the rumor because right now it is still in progress. We will know more soon.
Fair enough, both of you. And by the way, Mend, you forgot to bring up before also one of the things that Alvin Bragg decided to do was, who got, again, voted in last night, was that he enacted that 1-year statute where you could sue people for sexual harassment from the past, which was called the Trump rule, which I always find amusing because there were so many Democrats that got ensnared. It's always the boomerang effect with Trump. When you go after him for something, like the whole Me Too movement was brought to bring down Trump, and it ended up bringing down almost every Democrat and lefty sewage, especially in Hollywood. I want to move on to the last story because I have mixed feelings about this Golan. I'm extremely happy with what he's doing with NATO, yet at the same time, I think NATO's too big. I'm not a fan of many of the countries that are part of NATO. And this is the isolationist part of me. I'm not actually a huge fan of the G7, which used to be the G8 minus Russia. So I'm very happy that they're paying their fair share. But at the same time, I'm not exactly happy with these NATO countries to begin with. I don't think Turkey was brought in 1954. Well, it's 2025. Turkey, and I know Trump likes to praise Erdogan. This guy is a bad dude. He's a bad hombre, Golan. So I don't know what your thoughts on this. I know also that he's trying to get Spain, who hasn't even been paying 2%, to pay 5%. And you're living in Spain, so go for it.
Yeah, look, Spain, as usual, is a freeloader. You know, one of the jokes we have here, my wife and I, we're in Barcelona, is we walk around and they have all these signs that are like, tourists go home, or they'll be on the side of the jihadis or whatever, and they have stickers that are on the wall. And at first we're like, oh, should we be worried? Then we remember they're so lazy here, they'll never do anything about it. So it really doesn't matter. But in terms of NATO, yeah, this has been for decades. It's been a freeloaders club. So Spain fit right in, and the free ride that America's been giving them through, everybody. But, there were presidents that complained about it before. Bush complained about it. Even Obama whined about it, but didn't do anything about it. And Trump finally said, okay, here we go. You're going to put your, 5% of your GDP in. This is something he's been talking about for a while, by the way.
Which is double.
It's double, and in some cases even more than double, because some of these people have really been undercutting what they've been doing. And America's just been subsidizing Europe's safety the entire time. And by the way, some of the countries that haven't been putting money into NATO have the money and have been putting it elsewhere, have been putting it into their welfare states, or have been putting it into, whatever thing they decide, windmills or whatever thing they want to do. And then, ultimately America's just been capitulating. They've just been saying, no problem, I'll take care of it for you. And blank checks have been written to a lot of countries, not least of which Ukraine. And some of that, because it's coming through NATO money, means America was paying once again more than they should have. And it's about time. So I think this is a really good development. I agree with you, generally speaking, that NATO is an alliance that may or may not actually be useful to us as the superpower that we are. It's certainly useful to other people. And I think that there is value to it. I'm not an isolationist. I don't believe in isolationism for the sake of isolationism. But the idea that we now are going to be dragged into other people's wars, I feel like there are certain things we don't have to stick our toes into. And the idea that we automatically are required to, I don't love. If they can pay their fair share and make this worthwhile, and it's more of a deterrent, like when you put the club on your steering wheel, that thing can be kicked off really easily. But if a thief is like, I just don't want to deal with that, okay, fine, then I'm okay.
Mend, I just feel it's a little antiquated as we're witnessing Trump with the Abraham Accords. And obviously, there are rumors that Lebanon wants to join now the Abraham Accords and Syria wants to join the Abraham Accords. And then I look and I see we have a huge, giant military base in Germany, Ramstein. And I think about it, and we're going to need Ramstein eventually in the Middle East because that's the only way the Abraham Accords will ever last and work. And I know people aren't going to want to hear that, but we're going to need a base over there to secure our next investment. And this is an investment. I don't care how anybody wants to look at it. We thought Europe was our investment, and they were for many years. They're not anymore. These are our new trading partners. Trump, in his brilliance, saw this, and that I'm all for to do.
Yeah, I don't think we could give up on Europe. It is interesting that in 2016, Trump told NATO that they need to all pay their fair share. They need to put in 2.5% of GDP, and they laughed at him. The Americans were laughing at him. They said that Russia wasn't the problem. It was China. And, turn around, and it's right. And now they're not even talking about 2.5%. Now it's up to 5%. And Spain is the only holdout, and Spain has a great economy. I don't know how, but they have a great economy. They are flooded with migrants, like a third world country. It's really sad to see. Spain is the only holdout. They don't want to pay it. And Trump said he's going to make it up on tariffs on them. So either way, by hook or by crook, they're going to pay. They're a lefty socialist government that hates Trump. So that's their incentive for pushing back. Great. Let's see how that works out. As far as NATO itself, I don't see the utility in it as it once was. But at the same time, if we get into a skirmish with China, we're probably going to want as much help as we can get. And I'm not talking about defending Taiwan. I'm looking beyond that. I'm looking at China taking over global resources. It's only a matter of time before they start taking things out of South America or South Africa or the African continent that we're not going to be okay with. And there's going to be some sort of conflict over minerals, resources, water, who knows what. So I don't think that getting rid of NATO altogether is a good idea, but I think forcing everybody to pay their fair share, making them pay for what the protection that they're getting is absolutely the right thing to do, and Trump is doing the right thing by pressing these people to do it.
Well said. And Golan, I just want to bring up very quickly to both of your points, you both brought up China. Who does China pose a bigger threat to? Our NATO allies or our new allies in the Middle East? And that's who China, in my humble opinion, brings the greatest threat to, as well as Russia, is our new allies. And that's who we have to watch out for. So that's why I'm more on the NATO game in that region than I am in the UK or in France. They've essentially pretty much abdicated anything. They've abdicated their thrones. And we're witnessing something new happen. So I'm all for pouring as much money as possible into a new axis or a new power that you over there.
I'll tell you a quick story. I was in the country of Georgia, and we were off-roading there and doing some vacationing. And I was very surprised that as I was driving on the highways, China owned all of the highways. They had spent a ton of money to basically buy out the large swaths of that country. My wife used to live in Ghana, and she saw the same thing, that China was buying swaths of places in Africa. And it was like, okay, why were they doing this? At the time, it didn't occur to me. And little by little, as I've studied politics more, as I've grown more aware of what's going on globally, I've discovered that, first of all, they are cozying up to some of these places, not out of ideology, but to lock down rare earth minerals or cheap oil or whatever. But also, it allows them that, what do they call it, the Silk Road? It allows them a path to be able to bring things through countries that they might not otherwise be able to do it. I think that they are looking for how they can basically take over oil refinement, take over rare earth minerals, sell cheap, drone technology and spyware and AI and all the rest. They can undermine U.S. influence while they're there. They don't have military bases there yet, but it's something that they've been talking about. They've already been setting up footholds in a lot of these places, kind of strategic footholds. So I feel like this is just the beginning of where they're going to go. They already are doing the espionage, tech infiltration, economic coercion, military provocation that happened on the NATO side. But the Middle East side, I think it's just starting and it's just going to get worse as it goes along. So I think if you look at it holistically, like in a long-term view, China's a bigger threat to our newer allies than it is to our traditional.
Well done, both of you. And go on, the Judah is always right. And I want to thank Mend for, even though he didn't meet anybody by the pool today, you still added a lot of value to the show. I want to remind everybody, you could find us on Apple Podcasts. You could find us on Spotify. Of course, you can find us on Substack at The Daily Cheat Sheet. Same thing with Instagram and same thing with YouTube. Go to YouTube and follow us on The Daily Cheat Sheet. Comment. We do reply back. Tell a friend. Grab their phone if you have to and download for them The Daily Cheat Sheet. Have them subscribe. Tell your loved ones. Tell your enemies. Tell everybody. The Daily Cheat Sheet. Everybody have a good morning, afternoon, and night world wherever you are. God bless you all.